All right, with that, let's go ahead and call the March 2nd executive meeting to order. First item on the agenda is a roll call. Mr. Burns?
Absolutely. Jackson Bogan.
Present.
Jerry Leverance. Jerry Reynolds. Jerry Schroeder.
Present.
Tom Murtaugh. Present. Greg Jones. Present. Matthew Parker. Present. Quorum present.
Thank you, sir. Approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the January 5th, 2022 meeting as submitted.
I second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. New business.
Okay. The petitioner for Pretty Prairie Minor Subdivision, that's requested a continuance to the March 16th APC meeting in order to obtain soil testing.
Thank you. Mr. Schroeder, on to the public hearing.
I move that S-5055 Pretty Prairie Minor Subdivision Minor Sketch be continued to the March 16th APC public hearing at petitioner's request.
I second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Approval of the March APC public hearing agenda.
Okay. I see we're going to move the home occupations and also the warehouse businesses. And I talked to Kathy about that, and I talked to some others about that. And what I'd like to do is send that warehouse back to Ordinance Committee so we can air that out a little bit more. Talking about making existing, which I didn't think about before, making current self-storage places non-conforming. I think we should visit about that. And
Gary, I'm sorry, could we go ahead and put it on the APC agenda, and then we can continue it to April if we need to, or even dismiss it, but it's already been advertised in the paper, so I feel like it needs to go forward in March APC, but we can always continue it or withdraw it at that point.
How many continuances do we get?
For our own?
I think we can continue.
We can do as many as we want.
Yeah.
If we do not continue it, do we have to do the paper again?
Yeah, I think so. You know, it's like $20.
think of the taxpayers.
Will it be at ordinance discretion whether to move it forward or no?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, okay.
So we'll decide.
So are we going to decide at the next meeting, or are we going to decide at the APC meeting, at this meeting?
At this meeting.
So I'll put it on the agenda, and then I'll continue it. Gotcha. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you for that clarification,
that.
Kathy.
Okay. I move that the following UZO amendments be placed on the March 16th, 2022 Area Plan Commission public hearing agenda. That's UZO Amendment 103, change home occupations to allow state-licensed medical professionals, UZO Sections 5-5-3 and 5-5-4, and would require self-storage warehouse business within the urbanized areas to obtain a special exception, UZO Section 3-2.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
Okay. Now, I can make a motion, and I really don't want to make that date specific, but I would move that we will send self-storage warehouses to the Ordinance Committee to kind of revisit some issues, and then we will send that to the full commission when we get something that we're happy with.
So if I understand correctly, requesting a continuance until sent to the full APC by the Ordinance Committee.
That'd be my motion, if that's acceptable to Eric.
Good, you bet.
Okay.
Go into ordinance till they
Pass it
move on.
out. Yeah, again. Okay.
Okay, we have a motion. Would anyone like to second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Everybody understand what we're doing here? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor of sending this back to ordinance and continuing this until ordinance decides it's ready to go to the full plan commission. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That carries.
I move the following subdivision petition be placed on the March 16th, 2022 Area Plan Commission public hearing agenda at petitioner's request. Placement thereon being without reference to compliance or noncompliance with the adopted subdivision ordinance. That'd be S5060, the Oasis Major Preliminary.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
I move the following rezoning petitions be placed on the March 16th, 2022 Area Plan Commission public hearing agenda. Z 2847, Tippecanoe Acquisitions LLC, West Heights Condominiums, R1 to PDRS, and Z 2850, Purdue Research Foundation, CBW to R4W.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Approval of the March ABZA public hearing agenda. Easy for me to say.
I move the following petitions be placed on the March 23rd, 2022 Area Board of Zoning Appeals public hearing agenda. BZA 2070, Tim Valiant, and BZA 2073, Joe Scheidler, Landworks Engineering.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Determination of variances, Lafayette Division of the ABZA.
I move the following request for variance from Unified Zoning Ordinance are not requests for use variance prohibited from consideration by ordinance and statute. Case 2022-08, Blackthorn Holdings LLC, amended. Case 2022-10, Dental Care of Lafayette, and Case 2022-11, Jetboy LLC.
I second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Review and approval of the January and February budget report.
I move we approve the January 2022 and February 2022 budget reports as submitted.
I second.
Mr. Hiddle.
Thank you. The budget reports for January and February are located in the two back pages of your packet. Nothing of particular interest to call out for your attention, but would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions from the commission members? Hearing none, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. No other business. We'll take that motion.
I move we adjourn.
So moved. Now that's a meeting. Tippecanoe, or the Area Plan Commission, Tippecanoe County Ordinance Committee meeting to order. First item on the agenda, approval of the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes from the January 5th, 2022 meeting.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. On to item number 2, one we've already been discussing briefly. Kathy, Amendment 103.
So we originally discussed this in December. At the January meeting, we actually made a motion to go forward with the self-storage warehouse business special exception requirement. And you wanted some additional information for the medical-related, remember I sent that email? Yeah. So I went ahead and because it takes a month, we have to file a month in advance of the meeting to get it on the agenda. And I thought, oh, you guys will do this medical-related thing, and we'll get it out, hit it out of the park, it'll be done, and then we can go forward. And then I've learned that Gary had some issues with the self-storage warehouse business. So I don't know if you want to talk about that some, or...
We can if you, are you done with the medical stuff? Or is there-
Well, you want to talk about medical-related
I'd say do
first
the
of all?
medical first.
Get that?
If we could, let's go through the medical side, and then from there, we'll open it up for discussion, and Gary can enlighten us all on to what he has discovered since our last get-together.
Okay. So the email I sent is basically the medical professions that require a license in the state of Indiana. They include things like acupuncture, genetic counseling, dietitians, massage therapists. I'm not going to read them all. They're in the packet. So we just want to have these types of businesses be allowed to operate as a home occupation, which currently they are prohibited. So that's really all there is to it.
And going from memory, Kathy, it has been 30 days or so, so we just wanted this, I think everybody agreed, we wanted to just see it in writing so that we could make sure we weren't passing something that, oh my gosh, now
Right.
not to pick on tattoo parlors, but now a tattoo parlor can be operated out of the home.
Correct.
And you sent this to us the day following the meeting, thank you for that. I feel very comfortable with this as the wording is here and written down. Any room for discussion or any discussion at all on this? Anybody? Questions, comments? Very well then. Thank you very much for that.
It also includes some things like dentists and optometrists, which, they're not going to, they have a lot of equipment that they use in their profession. They're not going to likely put that in their house. So, yeah, but that's fine. It's just a moot point.
But going even on that, if they would, it would allow for one, correct?
Right.
So it's
not a
even if you
clinic.
wanted to operate
Right.
your dental practice out of your home,
If you really want to do that.
yep, lay down on the couch, let me see that tooth. Okay. Very well then. We will now open it up for discussion. Gary, you and I spoke briefly right before the meeting, but you had some interesting points in regards to the self-storage. Would you mind sharing with the group?
Well, I didn't think until later, and we put in the, where they could get a special exception if they wanted to put in one in a site, and we could have a public hearing to hear that. It wouldn't be done by right. But then I was thinking about already the existing ones would now become non-conforming, and that's not only the old ones, but the new one that they just built, and I just know that that affects financing and insurance businesses, and I think that's just kind of a burden that we put on a business person, especially when they just build them by right, all of a sudden we say, guess what, we changed our mind. And I'm wondering if there's some way that we could make the existing ones conforming.
Staff, any comments?
While she's getting up there, I know there's one provision I talked with Kathy about in the ordinance where if you have a conforming use and a highway takes a right-of-way and now your setback does not meet the current setback, which would make you non-conforming, the ordinance says you are still conforming because it was a governmental action that took that land, and we're not going to put a burden on you to come and get an exception or not be able to repair your house or add on to your house. So that there is some precedence for that. I'm just not sure of the mechanism that we can do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that would work. I don't know, Eric, if you have any ideas on that.
Not off the top of my head, because the whole nature of non-conforming is, great, keep doing it, but
Right.
let's get you in line when you need to make a change.
Right.
And that's a pretty organic, very deep down at the base of all the kinds of regulation we have. There may be a way, but it's not occurring to me at the moment. Is there any other approach to it? I mean, I like your condemnation thinking that it cannot, because it was governmental action, create a non-conforming use just because they took your property. It actually helps the governmental entity. They don't have to pay as much either.
I think, well, the difference is this isn't a taking. This
No,
is
I get
just
it.
a requirement
No,
for
I
special
understand. It's just
exception.
that sort of thinking that
I got another thought process.
is an analogous kind of thing. I just don't know.
I know.
We spoke with the owner of the storage facility, the new one that Gary had spoken with. It was a very good conversation, and we suggested that if he wanted to find out from his lender if they had problems with the idea of legal nonconforming, what would allay their concerns. And we thought that perhaps they could go ahead and get a special exception, if that would be helpful. And Lafayette was on the phone call with us, and we hadn't heard back from him yet, but that's one route that could be taken.
Well, an expedited special exception process.
Yeah.
Okay, so I go back to what you had worked with on trying to make an expedited change to a planned development, and it became easy. You didn't have to prove anything, really. You just had to ask for it, and you got it. Maybe that's an approach in this situation, since we're imposing it as a governmental entity by making a change, that you now have, you fill this out, and we're going to grant it because you're going to get your special exception automatically because you're grandfathered.
Yeah, you'll have to figure out the legal
You'll have to-
special
yeah.
exception, but
Yeah.
there's one other thing we do when we put a date on. You know, we say anything that occurred, mostly land subdivisions, 10 acres, 5 acres. If it was created before this date, you can do certain things. If it's created after this date, you follow new rules. I'm not saying you have to answer that today, but that's another workaround that we have in the ordinance with a date.
That's in the subdivision ordinance, yeah.
Here's my concern, and I'm not their lender, so I'm just clarifying that. If they go to non-conforming and we give them this special exception, the lenders are still sitting in the seat of if something happens to that property, they can't put back what they have. And so, if I've made a loan on something and life was grand, we don't get notified of changes. The borrower probably doesn't get notified of, or the owner of an existing one. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting with a property that's not only non-conforming now, I did nothing wrong. And if I try to sell it, that's a whole nother crux. So
disagree that it's non-conforming. It's permitted in the zone by special exception. So.
Does that carry forward even if the place blows
It's
away?
already approved. If they choose to expand, then they'll need to get an SE for the expansion.
But under the current rules, they could, and it's a non-issue.
Say that again. Under the current rules, they could do what?
Expand or change or do whatever, and it's allowed. Correct?
Yeah, until the ordinance is changed.
Right, but how have we taken anything away from them?
Well, it is, but it's not if they're trying to go closer to the road, and they can't do that. I mean, they're extending, well, you can't go that far. So,
I guess I feel like the dog's wagging the tail on one deal, that we're going to paint a brushstroke and change a lot of things, and that's concerning to me.
Yeah, well, the city of Lafayette doesn't want these things in core areas of their city. That's what they've asked us to look into. That's what we're trying to do. So
I
by
think-
giving them a special exception option, it gives the public and city staff and city officials a chance to have their say, in that regard.
And Ryan, I don't think anybody is arguing
Yeah.
that piece.
But I disagree that it's non-conforming to the zone, because it's not. They just got in before special exceptions were required. And so if they choose to expand, then they'd have to get a special exception for the expansion.
Can something be added in the permitting process? Sorry. That if you're applying for a permit to be this, then there's X, Y, and Z step you have to go through before the permit's approved?
Well, they would learn that at the permitting stage anyway, if they didn't already know that.
Yes.
After May 1st to Oh, they would be perfectly fine. But if somebody was filing for a building permit after May 1st, they would have to go to the BZA.
But it's only within the urbanized Seward area, so the Toys R Us is outside of that.
How
So-
is that outside of that?
Well, see, this is Earl Avenue here, and here's Main Street. So
Really?
this is the area we're talking about. It's more the core
It's
central city area. So Toys R Us, they're fine. They're just legal.
Huh. That's a weird boundary.
Yeah, it's
Tell me about it.
I think pre-World War II development, basically.
I want to change that.
Wow. So it's really, I mean, okay.
Yeah,
So
so
it-
we're only talking about, yeah.
Truly, it's,
But again, I go back to, it's one thing that has caused this.
True. Yeah,
That we're,
Yeah, but it's a legitimate change. It's one
Yeah.
thing that's caused Lafayette and in turn us to say, yeah, you're right, that shouldn't be the case. The idea is, I mean, this is old town, and, you know, you don't want to locate something that doesn't employ anybody, only serves a few people, takes a lot of land. Usually, you know, it's a low desirability in terms of, especially being in an old town. You want those to be located in this vast swath of automobile-oriented suburbia that surrounds us. You don't want them to be located downtown, you know, or near downtown.
and most of them are around the edges of town, if you think about it.
Market Square, is Market Square in?
Like Veterans Memorial, there's a couple.
Is Market
Market
Square?
Square,
Because there's a couple storage units.
they're outside.
They're outside, so they're good.
Yeah.
So we don't disagree, and we approved that. We think this is a good idea. I just disagree that we're putting a burden on the storage units that are already there, that built, and we're basically saying we want you to go away, not that you get in compliance.
No,
You go
have
away.
to apply for a special exception.
Well, you can ride the legal nonconforming use till the day you die, you know, as long as it's not interrupted for a year or more, or you change hands, ownership. You know,
No.
this guy can operate that self-storage facility forever.
He can
No,
even
no, no,
change
no, no,
ownership.
He can change it,
Yeah.
okay, well,
Just can't change use.
okay,
Yeah. Right.
okay. No, that's new to me, because that's not how it operates in other places.
To try to bring this to point, I'm going to make a motion that we have the staff work on any solutions to try to make the existing storage units in the urbanized area conforming without going through a special exception. I know we don't have a workaround now, but I'm going to make a motion that we send that back to them and see if they can come up with a solution.
do we know if there are any in this area currently?
The only one I can think of is the one we're talking about at the old Coke bottling plant.
Second.
I'll take
Real
a
quick,
second.
We've got a motion and a second. Now, more discussion.
More discussion. I'm just
Yep.
trying to bring the discussion to a point. I think we've aired it out, and
So this one is, for all we know, this is the only one that's in this area.
I think there's one down on Erie Street. Is that in here or out?
Oh, that would be,
Yeah,
Here's
Yeah.
Erie. Is it downtown?
it's right along Erie and
Erie by
Ferry.
Ferry. Between Union and Ferry. Yeah. And there may be some,
The old Sherman Lang.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Where?
On
So,
Ferry, right
there, Oh, Ferry and yeah.
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 So I just think there's more out there than we're aware of. So anyway, that's my motion, and see if we can come up with something.
And
I like the date idea personally.
I'm sorry, what was your
what
motion again?
No, my idea is that we send this back to the staff, see if they can come up with a solution that makes the existing self-storage warehouses in the urbanized sewer area conforming.
Okay.
And then going forward, anyone that is established will need to get a special exception.
So, real quick discussion topic. Why wouldn't we just attach a date to it?
What's the downside to a date? Why doesn't that accomplish?
Why wouldn't we just say March 2nd?
Well, whenever Plan Commission or March 2nd, yeah.
I guess I don't understand, attach a date, so.
So that those that have come prior to, so let's say that we forget one, because the little bit of the fear is, so we're sitting here hemming and hawing, we go, okay, well, we've got the old Sherman Lang or Munzer, and we've got the Coke plant, and there could be one out there that we're not aware of. And so by attaching a date to it, that going forward beyond March 2nd, 2022, anything prior to that that was already operated is considered conforming. And should something happen, would be able to rebuild under the normal standards that they were able to build in the first place. So Coke plant, use that as an example because that's an easy one. It's fresh on everybody's mind. I believe this is what we're saying. It blows away tomorrow. They can rebuild, and this is an insurance issue, by the way, referred to as ordinance or law coverage, which not everybody buys and not everybody gets. And so this could leave them in a situation to where their insurance does not respond on behalf. Well, this gets rid of that and says, okay, you can build back with the same like, kind, and quality, the old Coke factory, with obviously new material, and put it back, and you can build the same thing that you had.
The only mechanism that would allow for that is to get the special exception.
But we're saying, what if we make it conforming if it was already in existence prior to the date of...
There's no legal mechanism to do that. You can't say this zoning code is frozen for this property and is just as it was until this date, and this zoning code applies to everything else in the city going forward.
Is there any analogous situation where we use a date?
I mean, you can attach a date as a condition or a commitment to something, but you can't override.
I mean, there can be legally non-conforming lots, there can be legally non-conforming uses, but if something changes about them, if it's demonstrated they're legally non-conforming.
I understand.
Then,
No, I know that's how we are now. I'm just thinking there's something else that may be out there. You've come up with two possibilities, one being a date, one being a governmental action created it, so therefore we're not going to hold it against you.
It's not going to fit.
Well, I don't buy that just yet.
And that's why, off the top of my head, I don't see how we do it. However,
Yeah.
it sounds like something we ought to be looking at.
I think we
If we
should look
can.
at it. I'm sure somebody else has done this. We're not.
Here's the only other thing that I would think of, and this is just,
I mean, it's a thought
how do we
exercise, sure, we'll look
solve,
into it, but
how do we solve Lafayette's problem in another manner? And I guess that's just looking at it in a slightly different
Well,
direction.
You're saying they should be allowed to just continue and expand as is. Lafayette is saying they're not interested in these uses there. I don't think those two positions are reconcilable unless City
from our
Lafayette wants to change its
No, I get it.
tune.
Well, no, I'm talking about solving their problem in a different manner than a special exception. Solving their problem.
They're interested in these uses going away.
Well,
That's,
Eventually.
This was the
Well,
second
and
thing we
the
came
other
up with,
concern is the
remember?
people that properties will change aren't even being notified, so they don't even know to come forward until it's too little too late. Like, if something happens, they're going to find out. We can't even tell, we don't know at this moment how many are in that zone. So the people that it's going to affect, they wouldn't even have inkling of it. They're not going to be notified. I think of when we changed zonings in the neighborhoods, when we went to, I can't think what neighborhood it was, where we changed them all from R2, R3 down to 1. They got notified. They got to come, and I can think of one specific person that stood here, and we left their zone as it was. They had a chance to remonstrate or whatever.
Yeah.
We're doing this, and as a owner of a conforming property, I don't even know.
we have.
That was on the overlay in regards to the park.
We have zoning administrator decisions on non-conforming uses that would be thrown out if this goes where it goes. For example, the Starbucks over in the levee. We have a zoning, the owner requested a zoning administrator determination on the grandfathered status of that because West Lafayette outlawed drive-throughs in the CBW zone many years ago. And there were some that came in, and Starbucks, so under, Gary's thought, they should be able to do whatever they want because they came in before. At one point, CBW had drive-throughs. So zoning administrator determination, legal counsel at the time made the decision that, well, this is a grandfathered use. You've not demolished the building, you're essentially just reconstructing it, which that's essentially what they did when it was the Long John Silver's, and if you guys remember what it was. And so, but the drive-through is a grandfathered use. It cannot get any bigger. You can constrict it, or you can leave it the way it is. And so that's how that went down. That's why that drive-through looks the way it does, because it's essentially frozen in time. If they ever got rid of it, then they couldn't rebuild it. What you're essentially saying, you're having two classes of properties under this philosophy, which would be an administrative headache, certainly, but moreover, it really erases the point of nonconformities, especially when the locality is making a calculated decision. There's certain uses they do not want in certain places. You're essentially removing that option. And really the fundamentals of what a nonconformity is. You know, it's meant to go away after time.
Well, fair
after
enough.
It's ceased.
But the Long John Silver and Starbucks example, the petitioner knew about it and signed up for it. So now, put yourself, so what we're doing is we're
I
acting.
don't know if they did or not, but at the time
Well,
the property was exchanged.
let's assume they did. So now
They
put
claimed
yourself,
Starbucks did want to expand it, and they were told no.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. So put yourself in petitioners or in investor mode, okay? So you buy the Coke plant, you put millions of dollars into it to change it to a storage facility.
Before you inquire about zoning issues?
It was legal,
conforming.
Ryan.
Ryan, that's the
It's
issue.
legal.
It's conforming.
Today, it's legal.
I got you.
After
Okay.
the fact change.
So an after-the-fact change, and tomorrow we go change it after yesterday you were good, and you spent millions of dollars, and now if you have a fire tomorrow, and it's more than 50% damage in our county, in our city, nope, sorry, tear it down, you can't rebuild, and the city will not give you a special exception.
I find it hard to believe the city wouldn't give them a special
It
exception.
doesn't matter if we find it difficult to believe they can.
We don't have control over that, but all what we're requesting is that they drop $500 on a special exception permit, yes.
If what?
That essentially what we're
$500.
asking, if it is mowed down by nature or casualty, what have you, that the burden on them, that they would now have to, since the ordinance has changed since they first went in, is now they would have to apply for a special exception to rebuild, essentially, yeah.
And
So-
must be granted that special exception.
Jackson, okay.
Right.
I guess point of
Because
order.
again, the
have a
city,
motion on the
the
floor.
city's not interested in this particular use in these areas. And so that's the underlying thing. Is
Right.
it just the owner and the banks, or does the city and its desires to have the city have a certain look, certain appearance, certain uses in some places and others not? You know, the two are not reconcilable. You know, there might be some give here and there, but
Okay.
you know, by and large, the city's pretty adamant. No, we're actually not interested in this use being here. Like, you know, car sales in the NB zone. You know, there may be somebody that's grandfathered.
Well, we would like to try to find a way to make it happen. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor of motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. So we are now tasking and asking to try to find a way to make it happen.
We will investigate.
Thank you.
Okay, and we agree with the city. I just think that's a little harsh, is all. You know, it's not a perfect world. We don't start with a clean sheet of paper, you know, and things are changing, as I talked to Kathy. We're getting storage units, we're getting entertainment at the mall. You know, it's just, things are changing.
Jackson, one more thing. The medical-related thing, we didn't have a
We didn't
motion
vote.
on that.
Yeah, good point.
Thank you very much for that
Please,
cleanup,
yeah.
Kathy. So in regards to the medical-related, we are asking for a motion to move the medical piece with the described items in the memo on the ordinance, defining state licensed medical professionals to be included.
To the full commission for consideration, and I'd say so moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you for that cleanup. Sorry, I skipped over that. All right, with that, citizens' comments.
Actually, I have one other thing, and I may have to ask Brian about this, but the Isaiah House rezone that we heard at our last meeting has been pulled. And that did result in some conversations about perhaps allowing that that type of use to be defined and allowed in residential zoning, so that in this case, an NB zoning would not be necessary, and they could go for residential zoning with a special exception. So I would like to ask that this committee ask the staff to look into wording on that and bringing it to a future ordinance committee meeting.
So
Does that need to be done in a form
Is
of
that a motion?
is it best to do that in the form of a motion?
I
Sure,
think.
for the record.
Okay.
Good way to keep it.
So I'd make the motion that we ask staff to looking into putting that into something that's brought forth.
Is that clear on what he's asking?
I know exactly.
Exactly.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Could I ask a quick question on that? Right now, if there's a group home, for example, got 6, boys living in a group home, that is by right? In a residential?
Group homes are kind of allowed almost every zone.
Yeah,
It's kind of state controlled.
yeah, yeah, which is certainly a more intensive use with
And that's kind of why,
with a bunch of teenage boys
And
running
that's-
around playing basketball than a little kid that's there for
a few hours.
12 hours.
Isaiah House is just sort of a police station.
Sure, and so it's less intense.
Right,
and
children coming
They're little kids. No, not always little kids, I get that. Because those kids are living there all the time. I remember that back in the day, thinking that was an interesting exception to allow that. I mean, it's good, it's a wonderful thing, but it's still pretty intense use sometimes.
Perfect. By the way, I would like to add that those heated discussions that we have are one of the reasons that I love the group that's sitting here today and the staff that's sitting out there, because it does allow us, and it does show and confirm to me that we are trying to make the best decisions possible, and that you're fighting and we're fighting and all of that. I don't consider it to be bad at all. And so thank you for your passion towards that. Thank you for your passion and mine and everybody here. And let's all kiss and hug, and we'll skip and frolic through the fields.
Appreciate that, Jack.
Thanks, all.
It's not a good meeting unless there's blood on the
That's
floor.
right.
Blood on the floor.
Thank you all.
Hey, that's scary. That's scary stuff, banker lady. That's scary stuff. No, you get a phone call, and guess what?